I have a very interesting family background. I have on my mother's side my grandmother from Scotland. I have a Romanian grandmother on my father's side, and on my grandfather's side, or on my dad's side, I have a Polish background as well. More specifically, my Romanian grandmother and Polish grandfather left after the war in 1945. They left Eastern Europe because of what was the situation at the time.
The Jewish community in Montreal is one of the oldest in existence, especially in North America. Though the community has changed, taking different shapes and evolved throughout the course of time. In its 100-year history here, some families have chosen to stay and improve the community, others chosen for various reasons to leave. This of course leads to the question, what made the experience of each different person and individual different from the other? In my documentary, I hope to capture this difference on film and further explain the question, what makes the experience in Montreal for Jews so different? So, in your whole family, they all left at one time, or was it more of a gradual, slow process?
It was gradual. My grandfather had a very large family, and they all left at different times. During the war, they didn't have much contact with each other, so it took a few years for them to all reconnect and realize where each other were. My grandfather didn't go straight away to Canada. He went to Italy first to work for a few years, and then he went to Canada, but he had a brother in Brooklyn, a sister in Toronto. A few family members did end up eventually in Montreal, but it took many years for that to happen.
Why Italy for work?
At the time, Canada was not accepting Jewish refugees from the Holocaust. It was a part of the policy under Mackenzie King, so one of the only places that was accepting Jewish people, based on what my grandfather's told me, was Italy. And he had his sister there who had just recently gotten married, and he was able to find work, and he knew the language, so many circumstances.
So when your family finally did come to Montreal, where did they move to? A specific part of the city?
Ironically enough, actually, most of my family ended up moving where I live right now on Clark and Duluth. A lot of my family, including my mom's side, ended up living Saint Laurent, Clark and Duluth, because it was a very affordable neighborhood at the time. You could live in an apartment, 6 people, a couple $100 a month, probably a lot less than that. So most of them ended up where I am right now, which is very nice for them. When they come to visit me, they get very nostalgic.
So I'm guessing that the commonality between your families, both of them, on either side, to come to Montreal was ultimately anti-Semitism then?
I'm not sure about the specificness of my grandmother's situation, but I knew that a part of it was they did want a better life, and they found it in Canada. At the time, they immigrated way before my dad's family. The immigration laws were a little bit easier for them. On my dad's side, absolutely. My grandfather has told me on many occasions the reason he did not come to Canada right away was because they weren't accepting Jewish refugees at the time. It was Italy first, and then once he found out that his brother was relocated in, I think it was in Brooklyn in the U.S., and that he was later going to go to Canada, that they were able to go themselves. But originally, no, there was not. He was not, I would say, from what he's told me, he was not accepted with open arms. So.
What do you ultimately think the reason is that your family decided to stay more or less in Montreal?
Because the family started regrouping in Montreal together, and they got comfortable and lively. And my grandfather did make quite a living for himself in Montreal, and he was ultimately very happy here. And a lot of his friends that he had made back in Poland or back in other parts of Eastern Europe had relocated to Montreal. So there was this unit who could all relate. They were all in the same place in their lives. And from my mother's side, I'm not quite sure of the specifics, but it's probably along the same lines. My mom's family had a chicken business there, so it was mostly because they found they were able to make lives for themselves. So.
And one last question. What do you think it means to be a Montreal Jew?
Definitely versus an Ottawa Jew, because it's interesting. I've
Or
lived
anywhere else in the world.
I've done 10 years as a Montreal Jew, 10 years as an Ottawa Jew. It's a considerably larger, lively community in Montreal, where it's huge, but in a sense, and I think other Jewish Montrealers can attest to it, everyone just seems to be interconnected because of the events and the people you know and the opportunities you have. I find as a young Montreal Jew to get to know other young Montreal Jews. More specifically, it is a little bit more meaningful for me having all of my Jewish family, most of them live in Montreal, so I consider myself to be more of a Montreal Jew than an Ottawa Jew, just because of the fact that this is where my family is and this is where they've made their place within the Jewish community. So
Perfect. Thank you, Jess.
you're welcome.